Yeah, so that's the general way that, we can work with anxiety, and we can support parents to do that as well, and be a coach. But there are times when those crises are really big.
Yes.
And what could we tell parents to do, or what could be helpful at those times?
Yes. So those are those moments where the young person's kind of fully gone into fight flight, and you may notice. So obviously there's that internal response that we talked about, the heart racing, pumping blood, to the arms and legs. Your breathing's getting quicker. You might not even be able to engage with your young person. They might almost just seem like they're in a world of their own. And I think to understand that sort of panic point, it's helpful to understand the brain. And this is a model I come back to all the time. I think it's just really helpful. Dan Siegel sort of coined this, the brain hand brain model. And it's just so helpful to come back to thinking about where is a teenager? Are they at that kind of orange level where we can do validating and we can talk, or actually have they flipped into that red where talking, validating isn't what's needed right in that moment, or it's not going to be enough to help? And so the hand brain model, I like to break it into sort of two parts. So the bottom brain here, this is your brain. We've got your brain stem and your emotion part of your brain. So we call this your downstairs brain, and your downstairs brain is where the fight, flight, freeze response comes. It's the alarm system's fired.
Survival stuff.
Survival, yeah. It's not thinking. This is to protect us.
This is that little amygdala kind of working so hard, isn't it?
Absolutely. And then we've got the upstairs brain, which is our thinking part of our brain. So this is the part of the brain where we are aware of how other people might feel, might think. We can think through consequences. We can think logically. We can engage in conversations about thinking about, okay, if this is too hard, how could we help you make it a bit more manageable?
Can problem solve and organise.
Absolutely. So when someone's feeling anxious, but their upstairs and downstairs brain are still both working together, that's where those last strategies that we talked about are really helpful.
Yeah, we can work in that orange
zone. Absolutely. However, when teens get into the red, it is what Dan Siegel talks about, flipping your lid, where it's all just downstairs brain. And so we can't think clearly, we can't problem solve. And for parents, I think that's just really useful to start noticing when is in that panic. And it can be a full-blown panic attack. And for some people it's a little bit subtler. But we know when we can't reach someone. You're trying all these things that have worked before, but it's just not working. And so that's when this part of the brain, what it needs is how do we calm the body? How do we, kind of that body first, to then bring the lid down, and then we can do the strategies that have worked before around problem solving.
It's more that bottom up approach that's needed there.
And for parents, that can be even just being present in that moment and letting that ride out. So it could just be time. It could just be, being that safe person. I'm here. I'm holding that space. So time can be helpful, but also more of those calming body things, like deep breathing.
While you talk about that holding thing, there's that lovely reference to the idea of being as parents that, or as adults, that we're the bowl, and the young person in the emotional distress is the water inside, and what we're doing is just holding that bowl steady isn't it? Yeah, and letting that water slowly cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we can just hold it with our calm presence.
Calm presence.
Yeah. Or we could just hold it with, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
You see, this is really
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
This is going to pass.
Yeah.
You're safe.
Making them comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, some of those nurturing things too.
Absolutely. And open to some of that more relaxation, slow breathing.
Yeah.
When you flipped your lid, you're not going to be able to listen and take on too much of that, but it's just, take a deep breath.
A warm drink.
Yeah.
Maybe something, it's holding on to something.
Yeah, that real sensory thing can help kind of bring us back and ground us. Yeah, warm drinks.
Yeah.
For some people they do like physical touch, a hug, and others that will make it worse. So, there is a difference between feeling anxious, having some intense anxiety versus this kind of crisis panic where we're working in that survival brain rather than the upstairs and downstairs together.
Yeah. So you talked about things that we can do with our body, slowing our breathing, and we can help them pace that too.
Model it.
What are some of the other things we can do? Things like sometimes temperature changes can make a difference too. That being warm and having something cozy to wrap around, or if they're too hot and flustered, having some fresh air and feeling
absolutely
cooler.
Going outside
can be helpful.
Cold flannels
or a warm flannel. It's getting to know what works and that feedback again. Having a warm bath or a shower can sometimes help to reset our bodies.
In that mode, I know I've sort of made this mistake quite often, is I logically know that they've flipped their lid, but I'm still using things like, would you like, and asking a whole heap of questions. And I think it's okay to say, here's a flannel if you'd like it.
Yes.
Here's a warm blanket, let me know, I can take it off. But instead of being like, would you like a flannel, I can get a cup of tea, I can... So it's actually, you need to be...
a little bit more directive. Yeah, it is.
Because actually you're...
taking charge of that
moment.
and
in that moment you are their upstairs brain, you're their thinking part of their brain, so you're doing that for them.
Yeah. So that can put the lid back on.
Yeah.
And I guess if we catch it before it gets into that red, then sometimes doing some distraction things can be helpful, because it takes the attention away from the worry and the triggers for the anxiety, and maybe just give some rhythmic thing to do that they're familiar with that might just help to distract. But it's harder to do when they've really flipped the lid.
And I think it's also just important to just note though that when the lid is flipped, even if we didn't do anything, that will eventually come down. So it is just time.
Writing it out.
Yeah. And there's those other things we talked about that can just help with that ride.
Yeah. And it's then that we can, once that's settled, then we can do some more of that talking stuff, the problem solving and the thinking about what would be helpful to do in these moments, and coming up with some coping self-talk, bringing in more healthy perspectives, affirmations and things.